وذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين.
He's up. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so is same gender attraction, is it forbidden in Islam if you have these thoughts or you have these feelings? Or if you feel that you're trapped in the wrong body, or you have some concern about what your gender is? Well, Islam teaches that everybody has desires, and we know that. Some of these desires, they're healthy, like the desire for food. If you lost your desire for food, you wouldn't eat, and if you didn't eat, you'd die. Some desires are neutral, like the desire for dessert. If you eat too much of it, it's bad for you. Eat a little bit, maybe you're going to be all right. And some desires are harmful, like the desire for revenge. Somebody messes with you, and you're like, I'm going to destroy this person. But you shouldn't destroy them, right? That's not a good thing. So desires by themselves, they exist within people, and the issue is whether you're going to act upon those things or not. So if you have a feeling, or you have some kind of urge, it doesn't mean that it's automatically a positive desire. And what we find in our society today is people say, you know what? Do what makes you feel good. That's a horrible statement in and of itself. Because if you do what makes you feel good, that could be a positive desire, it could be a neutral desire, it could be a negative desire. So as Muslims, we don't do what feels good, because Islam teaches us to conquer our negative desires, and it defines what are the negative desires. That's the ultimate definition of taqwa or piety in Islam. So for example, if you want to drink alcohol, but you don't drink it, is it a sin? No, it's not a sin. If you feel like gambling, and you say, you know what, when Khabib was still fighting, I knew he's going to win. Now it's Islam, and you're like, I know he's going to win. He's a Muslim, we root for the team. I feel like putting some money on him, but then you don't do it. Is it a sin? No. Even if you feel like praying to a statue and an idol, the biggest sin in Islam, and then you stop yourself, and you say, you know, this golden calf, no, forget this, man. It's just glittering. And you walk away. It's not a sin. So all of these things, there's a difference between your feeling and your desire and the things that you actually do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He only holds people accountable for what is in their control. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, he said, if somebody intends to commit a sin, and they stop themselves from doing that, Allah is going to write down one complete good deed for them. So if you genuinely are tempted and say, you know what, I want to drink this alcohol, and you say, what am I doing? Put it back on the shelf. I don't want to drink it. You just got a good deed. Now you don't just keep doing that and be like, keep going. Genuinely, like if you're really tempted and then you stopped, right? It's going to count as a complete good deed. So in Islam, there's a difference between a thought and an act. And it's very important to make this differentiation. So if somebody feels attracted only to the same gender, there's a guy and he says, I have no interest at all in girls. I only look at guys, and for some reason I'm just like, oh, that guy's so handsome, or whatever it is. The feeling itself is not forbidden in Islam, number one. Number two, the feeling in and of itself is not shameful. And this is important because some Muslims will be like, if they hear something like that, they'll be, oh my, you're disgusting, and you're this, and you're that. Feelings are not intrinsically shameful. Even if those feelings are not natural or they're not normal from the Islamic worldview. So if a man feels that he's actually a woman, or vice versa, a woman feels that she's a man, it is not sinful. It is not shameful. When these feelings are beyond the person's control, Allah is not going to hold them accountable for that. So the first very important point is feelings versus actions. And when we talk about being gay or being trans, are we talking about feelings or are we talking about actions? You need to make a differentiation between the two because people are not in the same category. Now, one of the things that happens is, are these feelings that people have, let's say same gender attraction or gender dysphoria, gender identity disorder, is it a choice or not? So you look at someone, and I'll come to the next part, but for now, if you look at somebody else and you say, did this person do something to bring these feelings onto themselves? And it's automatically, if you hear, like your friend says, you know what, I'm not attracted to girls, I'm only attracted to guys, what should I do? There may be this automatic urge to say, you know what, this guy did something. You know, you chose this. This is your mistake. You have made a mistake. This is something happened in your life and you have done this to yourself. So now let's look at it from an Islamic perspective. Let's take an example of doing drugs. Doing drugs is sinful in Islam, it's prohibited. And drug addiction is a very good analogy. So there's a difference between doing drugs and craving drugs. If somebody's addicted to drugs, let's say somebody's addicted to heroin, and you're addicted to heroin and you're feeling, it's been 6 months you haven't used, you're clean. But because you shot up in the past, the drug is in your body, and now you're craving it. You're craving it. And constantly you're going through a battle for years, constantly craving and wanting to have more. Are you sinful for the first mistake when you put the heroin into your body? Yes. If you made tawbah and you regret it and you changed, but now you're still feeling the temptation to keep on doing that because it's in your body, do you get a sin every single time you get a craving? No. There's a difference. And so this could possibly be the situation in some people's case. But then there's another case. Let's say somebody is addicted to drugs, not because they made poor choices in the past, but they had a surgery that they needed. They got the surgery done, and after the surgery, for the pain, the doctors gave him morphine. And morphine's in the body, and now it's been going on for such a long time because there was so much pain. He wakes up all of a sudden, and now he's craving the same type of substance of drugs like what morphine will give you. Is that craving a result of the person's past poor choice? No. So they neither got a sin in the past, nor are they getting a sin for this craving right now, but they're having these feelings. And these feelings need to be resisted, but the feelings don't need to be shamed. The feelings don't need to be looked down upon and all of that. So when it comes to things like same-sex attraction, when it comes to gender dysphoria, sometimes it's this category, and sometimes it's this category. And we're going to get into the thing about how we know. But it's very important to realize that, you don't allow your desires to define who you are. Okay? So now let's take the example of someone who's experiencing this feeling. I work with people throughout the world who contact me and say, Sheikh, I have no attraction to men, only attracted to women. Or I'm asexual, I have no physical attraction whatsoever. Or I feel like I'm in the wrong gender, I want to get, hormones injected or something like that. What do you do to somebody, what do you say to somebody who's experiencing these feelings? Well, there's a few things you say. First of all, you let them know. And I'm speaking to anyone who is listening who has these thoughts. You have two choices in front of you. Choice number one is that you accept that Allah is testing you with desires that you need to control. And it's going to be a very difficult test, no doubt. But it's a test from Allah. That's option number one. Option number two is you say, this is my identity, my desires define my identity. I'm going to embrace the LGBTQ plus identity movement, and I'm going to define myself by my desires. You're going to have to pick. These are the only two options you have, really, in front of you. And as a Muslim, you should pick the first one. You can obviously, understand that's what I'm trying to say here. Sometimes you have to say like everything, to clarify things. Now, if feelings are beyond your control, there's no need to be embarrassed. There's no need to feel ashamed. But you also need to understand that your culture and politics of where you live, it affects you. Because the behavior has become normalized, not the feelings. The practice of those feelings has become normalized within society. And there's a massive overrepresentation of people who are engaging in this type of behavior in media and in books and in songs and everywhere. It has affected the way you think about this issue. And the LGBTQ lobby is ready to welcome you with open arms, love bomb you. It's so tempting to get this massive attention. You will become the most popular person in school if you come out and say, I've embraced my desires that I have, and this is who I am now. And they'll probably give you money, they'll have you write some books, do some interviews. Wow, we got a Muslim who came out, and you're going to be the most welcome person ever. And then if you go to some people in the Muslim community and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and they didn't attend this seminar, and they didn't listen to what I said, that it's not shameful to have the feelings, then they're going to shame you. And they'd be like, you're sick, man, get the heck out of here. Don't come to our brother's dinner anymore, because I don't want to hang around with some, and then they'll start using all these words. So it's a very tempting proposition to be welcomed by one community and to be shunned by another community. It's very difficult, but it's a huge test from Allah. So understand that your choices is affected by the culture and the politics in which you live. Also, do not come out, right, by revealing your sins and saying, I did this, and I looked at this, and I had a date with so-and-so, or whatever it is. But you can come out and tell your feelings to someone that you trust and that you're looking for help because you don't know what to do. But be very careful who you tell. So if you have drug addiction, you're not just going to go to any random Muslim and be like, hey man, I need some help, I'm addicted to drugs. Because there's still people who will be like, astaghfirullah, how could you do that? Why would you, shoot heroin into your body? So you're going to be careful about the type of person or the type of people you choose to talk to. If you have pornography addiction, you say the same thing. You say, look, I just can't stop looking. What's going to happen? They'll be like, oh, you're sick, man. I can't believe you're going to do that. You go and you tell the people who will be able to help you. So tell the right people. Try an online community called straightstruggle.com, which is a worldwide network of almost 1,000 Muslims around the world who are struggling with the same type of desires, and they're helping one another, and they're educating one another about what to do. And there's another fantastic podcast by Wahid Jensen, who is somebody who has the same gender attraction himself. He's a doctor as well, but he resists that temptation and he doesn't engage in it. It's a fantastic podcast called A Way Beyond the Rainbow. Something that people who are struggling should listen to, and something that people who are trying to understand it better should also listen to. The next point is don't fantasize. Because yes, I said there's feelings are halal, as long as you don't act upon them, actions. But there's something in the middle. And in the middle is fantasizing. So Allah is not going to hold you responsible for thoughts that come to your mind automatically. But if you purposely choose to keep dwelling on those thoughts, and you say, man, I'm just fantasizing about that really, that guy that you're really interested in or whatever it is. You don't do that. You don't do that about a girl if you're straight, and you don't do that about a guy if you have these gay feelings. And likewise, you don't start thinking, I wonder what I look like in a dress. I wonder what's going to look like if I start wearing high heels and wear lipstick and get this, reconstruction surgery or whatever it is. If those are your thoughts, there's a difference between having the feeling and dwelling on the feeling and fantasizing about something. And the reason why I'm being explicit and I'm mentioning this is because I deal with dozens of people who go through this. And they don't know exactly where to draw the line, and they sometimes misunderstand what feelings versus actions means. Then you ask yourself the question, why did this happen to me? It's a legitimate question. And you should try to find out why you're having these feelings. Now, it's a very difficult struggle to find this out too, and I'm going to tell you why. But I'm going to give you some hints. First of all, there are no accepted studies at all, even by LGBT pro-activists, that have proven that there's any gay gene or that there's any biological basis for why people develop this. There's a lot of contradictory information you're going to find because there's massive political and activist pressure. If they try to publish anything, and I don't have time to get into more details, even just recently there was a big article that was retracted from one of the magazines, or one of the journals. But there's massive pressure being put. If anybody tries to publish something, even in a medical journal, that goes against the dominant LGBT narrative, it's going to be removed and that person will be canceled. I'll give you some examples of some contradictory information. The APA task force, American Psychological Association task force, they uncritically accepted studies that actually didn't meet their own scientific standards, and this came out. They said that sexual orientation is not caused by psychoanalytic factors, family dynamics, or trauma. And there's actually very good research to show that it is. So in the task force that came and reviewed this literature, this was their conclusion. And then you go and you look at the other literature and you see the exact opposite thing being put in there. So their conclusion was, we're unsure why people develop different sexual orientations. But there's a fantastic article, there's dozens of articles, but just give you one article by Bailey, Diamond, and Roski. It's called, Is Sexual Orientation Genetic? Here's their response. They say, it's probably somewhat genetic, but not mostly so. That's the language. There's little doubt that sexual orientation is environmentally influenced. So you have to read between all of this verbiage to try to figure out what exactly are you trying to say. The APA Handbook of Sexuality and Psychology, they said, unlike skin color, sexual attraction is not simply biologically caused. There are psychological causes such as childhood sexual abuse, one of the primary causes, one of the main causes. When it comes to gender, you find the exact same thing. In the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th version, which all the psychologists use, it says, in contrast to certain social constructionist theories, biological factors are seen as contributing in interaction with social and psychological factors to gender development. So you find it in there. If you read enough, you'll realize that you can actually get help to try to find out why this happened, and try to find out whether you can actually deal with this, treat it at some level, reduce the desires, or actually rechannel desires back into what is considered to be normal. When it comes to gender dysphoria, the majority of studies show that the majority of cases of childhood gender dysphoria desist automatically by the time people hit puberty, according to all long-term studies. The only way to keep them there is through propaganda. And that's what's actually taking place. So anyways, I have like 2 minutes left. So the question is, someone's going to ask themselves, but can I change? Am I really going to be able to do that? I encourage you to, number one, listen to the podcast, Away Beyond the Rainbow. Number two, go on straightstruggle.com and talk to all the other Muslims, especially the ones who've been there for over a decade, who have read a lot more. Talk to people who've read at least 1,000 pages on the condition. Don't talk to any random person who signed up yesterday. Talk to someone who's read a lot, like Wahid Jensen, and ask them, say, where do you recommend? What should I read? What are some of the things that I should read? And there are a few things I would advise you to look into. So that's 2 resources so far. The third is a journal called the Journal of Human Sexuality. And there's an entire series that keeps on coming out. This is a series of journals published by peer-reviewed medical professionals that show that people can actually change their sexuality. It's not guaranteed, but like most therapy, it's not guaranteed. How many people go for marriage counseling and walk out and be like, fixed all the problems? How many people go into counseling with their teenage children and be like, we came out of therapy, everything's good now? Most people, it doesn't just work that quickly, right? It doesn't have that high success rate either. Not that it's not important. So check out those studies as well. And lastly, look into the research of Joseph Nicolosi Jr. and look into something that was actually recently developed and recommended for Muslims by Dr. Yarhouse. It's called SIT, the SIT framework, Sexual Identity Therapy Framework by Dr. Yarhouse. And you will find that it's not just for Muslims, not just for religious people, even people who are non-religious, they don't even believe in God, they say, but I want to have a natural family. I don't want to just adopt children. I also believe in the concept of like having family and biological children, and I want to get this undone. So there's a lot of things. And I'll conclude with the last point. And some people may not like this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Don't go to a therapist. One of the worst things you can do is you can just go to some random therapist. It doesn't matter if they're Muslim. Now, I don't mean don't go to therapy for like marriage counseling and teenage and all that stuff. The problem with be very, very cautious about going to a therapist. Why? For a few reasons, even if they're Muslim. Reason number one is that most people are trained in affirmative therapy. That's their framework. That's what they've been taught. That's what they know to do. So even though they're struggling inside, they're like, I don't know how to reconcile this, this is what they're taught to do. Number two, let's just say they've overcome that, and you ask them, hey, do you have a strong Muslim identity? Do you pray? Do you have good Islamic knowledge? You've studied some books. You attended, the Daysir Seminary and Jannah Institute programs and all that. Maybe we're getting a little bit closer. But guess what? If they try to treat you with whatever, usually, even if they believe in all that, they don't have knowledge of the frameworks that I've mentioned unless they've specialized in it. So even if they're practicing Muslim with good Islamic knowledge and tafsir knowledge, doesn't mean that they have this part down. They don't have the other expertise here. Let's assume they have the other expertise here somehow. They read privately or whatever it is, but they're also scared. Because if they try to treat you for this, it's going to be put under conversion therapy, old laws from conversion therapy, and they could potentially lose their license for trying to help you undo whatever you're going through. So be very, very cautious. It's like going to a Muslim lender at a bank, and you walk into a bank and you be like, yeah, but you're a Muslim, but it's a bank. It's still a loan, right? So it doesn't matter, a good practicing person, they're not giving out Islamic loans. It's still a bank at the end of the day. So be very careful of who you go to, what you tell them, and check what their credentials and what their experience is, and what have they done with Muslim clients who have come to them previously before you end up signing anything. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and guide us at all times.